from EXTC Alumni Committee on behalf of the department. With immense pleasure and gratitude, I like to introduce our alumni, Dr. Nikhil Shukla. He completed his bachelor's in electronics and telecommunication engineering from FCRIT Vashi in the year 2010. He is currently the assistant professor at the University of Virginia with joint appointment in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering and Department of Material Science and Engineering. He received his PhD from the University of Notre Dame in 2017 and completed his bachelor's degree from University of Mumbai. He also received the Best Paper Award from IEEE TMSCS in 2017, and he also served on the Technical Program Committee for Design Automation Conference in 2020 and 2021. Today, he is present among all of us to share his insights about opportunities in the field of research and development for an EXTC engineer. Now, I would like Meenal Tiwari to start with the interview session. Thank you, Meenal.
Thank you, Vansh. I hope I'm audible and visible too. Um, a very good morning to everyone present here, and welcome to this interview session, sir. I'm Veenal Tiwari, a third year EXCC student, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to take this interview session with you today, and also very excited to know about your journey and everything that you've got to share with us today. So, without any further ado, I would like to start off this interview session by asking you about yourself and about your job and the work that you have done so far.
Sure. So first thing, thanks for inviting me. And again, sorry about the the issues I had connecting to the account. Hopefully we can make up for that in the remaining time we have. Yeah. So again, I was in your shoes 10 years ago, approximately a decade ago. And so I basically completed my bachelor's from Father Agnells in 2010. And then I basically came to America in 2011. So the fall of 2011 is when I started my graduate studies here. And in fact, my original graduate studies actually started out at Penn State. So Penn for that was, hey guys, can you hear me? For some reason, I got a message that there was error.
Yes, sir. You got stuck in between. Can you repeat what you said?
I believe you are. I cannot hear you.
Hello, am I audible? Just a minute.
Well, can you hear? I think you're mute for some reason.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we are able to hear Nikhil.
If maybe somebody else can try speaking, that way we can.
Okay.
I'll rejoin. Just a minute.
Yeah. So Vedant, can you continue with her question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, I guess the person.
Nikhil, I think, got disconnected or he must have left. Let's wait for some time.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible now. Nikhil, you are on. I think you are on mute.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
I can. Okay, we'll give it another try. So the thing is, yeah. So I came to America in 2011. Started my graduate studies at Penn State, and I was in Penn State until 2011, 2016, early 2016. And it turned out that my PhD advisor at that time actually decided to move to Notre Dame, and so after almost 4.5 years of being at Penn State, I had to move to Notre Dame, which is where I was there for about a year and a half. And then I finally, graduated in 2017 with a PhD. And then, while of course I was completing my doctoral studies, I basically was hunting for a job. I was always interested in academia, and so started. Joined UVA in 2018, and I'm there since then. Yeah.
So, can you also tell us about your job that you're currently doing?
Yeah. So so my sort of title here is an assistant professor, and just to put things in context, there are typically 3 levels of professorships that you have, at least in the American academic system. You started as an assistant professor, then you basically have about 6.5 years before you go up for this process called as tenure. And then once you get tenure, it typically comes with a promotion, which is you become an associate professor, and then finally after that, professorship, right? So right now I'm in the very first stage of this quote unquote journey. And what I typically do is, a big part of my, I would say, responsibility or job profile is, of course, I have to teach. So I teach graduate courses and undergraduate courses, depending on which semester. But a big focus of my work is also on basically running a research program. So the way it typically works here is, I have I have a research group that then as a part of the research group, I hire PhD students and master students, and then they do the work based on whatever research direction we are pursuing. And then my job is to basically mentor them, and also another important responsibility of of that entire process is I have to raise money for them. So basically, I have to I have to sort of write proposals that get funded, and that in turn sponsors PhDs for students, right? And so in terms of what I do right now, a lot of my work is focused on looking at microelectronic platforms. So looking at new materials, devices, or microelectronic devices. So looking at transistors, that sort of thing, and circuits. And we look at how we can use these new architectures that are out there for figuring out or designing new computing systems. So basically, sort of coming up with more powerful alternatives for the traditional sort of digital architectures that we have today, right? And so, I would say that a lot of my research is looking at things like, we try and design, for example, I don't know if you've gone through this, but you learn how to do the stick diagram of a transistor, right? And what we do with that is we basically put that on a real integrated circuit, and then figure out that we can what we can do with it, right? Things like that.
Okay, that was really interesting to know, sir. Moving ahead, I would like to ask you about your journey after Agnes. Like, how was it different than the journey you had in India with your studies and everything? And how did you prepare yourself for studying in a foreign country? And would you recommend any universities or the way we should apply for them?
Well, the first part of your question was, journey after Agnells was essentially, as I said, I was always interested in academia and more of a, research centric academic position. And so I pretty much knew that I had a couple of options at my disposal, and America was the most interesting one out of that. And in terms of preparation per se, the one thing I will say is, research is or doing graduate studies is a major time commitment, right? So typically, if you're looking for a PhD position, you're looking at about 5 years after you start your studies. And if it's a master's, you're typically looking at least 2 years, right? So it's a big time commitment. And so the first thing is that, do it if you really want to do it. That'll be the first advice that I have, because otherwise you're spending the most sort of critical years of your life, when you're like 25 to 30 years of age, in basically a lab. That becomes your life for the next 5 years, especially if you're in a very competitive research group, right? So do it. I mean, you should be really motivated for that. The second thing is be really prepared to work hard. And in terms of preparation, I would say again, I mean, what I would say is try and again, I mean, I know that during your bachelor's you go across a spectrum of areas, right? I mean, all the way from telecommunication systems to basic transistor designs, right? I would say pick up a few that you really enjoy, if that, I mean, whatever you really want to look deeper into, and then try and build a genuine interest in that area, right? So, for example, I mean, I can speak for myself here, which is when I was in Agnels. I mean, one of the things I really enjoyed was looking at transistor physics. So this was something that was not typically in the curriculum, at least that I was studying back then, but it was something I really enjoyed. I basically said I want to dig a lot deeper into that, and that's how it all started in some sense, right? So. I mean, I would say that you have to. I would say that if there are a couple of things you care about, that would be the area that you want to pursue graduate studies in. And again, the format of typically, at least graduate school, I can speak for American universities, is very different from at least what I experienced back in India, which is it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot more one-on-one interaction with your advisor, whoever is going to mentor you through your graduate school. So it means that you're typically working on specific problems that are very very niche, and you go into really the depths of understanding that. And of course, you have coursework, the same things that you would do in a bachelor's degree, but it's a lot less emphasized as compared to what would happen in a bachelor's degree, right? So it typically requires creative thinking, a lot of time spent being frustrated about things not working, but eventually that's how you make progress in making new things work, right? So I'll put it like that.
Yes.
Did I cover your question, or I missed anything?
Sir, could you also tell us about some of the universities that we should apply for?
Well, I mean, again, so graduate school is a little. It's interesting, right? Typically, of course, I mean, you have the. I'll speak for American universities first, but I mean, you typically have the big ones out there, MIT and Stanford and whatnot. But typically, the way I would suggest you evaluate graduate school is what really matters, especially if you're going for a PhD degree, is number one, the specific area that you want to specialize in. So, for example, a particular school might be really, really productive in a particular area, but its overall ranking might not be, whatever. I mean, it may not be amongst the top ones, right? So it turns out that what I would go after is look at the areas that you want to specialize in, and it turns out that many universities have specific areas that they're really good in, so that's the way I would think about applying to grad school. And the second thing, of course, is when I say the areas, a university is particularly productive in a particular area, what that typically means is they have a bunch of faculty who are going to be very, very productive in that area. And so, the best way to, do a really good PhD is to find the right advisor, right? A lot of that, as I said, you're going to spend 5 years plus typically in an engineering PhD for trying to find the right. Trying to spend and specialize on a single topic, and so you really want to make sure that you really enjoy what you do. So a good advisor who has done some really interesting work in an area might be a very important criteria in choosing grad school.
Yes, I'm sure everyone took note of that. And I would also like to ask you, what are the various job opportunities for an EXCC engineer in the field of research?
Well, I mean, let me start off by this, which is I think if you think about sort of where we are right now, I mean, this is a really exciting time to be working in the tech sector, and particularly on the I would say electronics and telecommunication side. And I say that because think about what's on the horizon, right? You're looking at the advent of 5G coming in. And remember, so you have telecommunications. There is an enormous push towards what they call as IoT, or Internet of Things. And of course, one of the key goals of doing this sort of IoT in some sense is to, for example, push intelligence to the edge. So you don't want. So think about a scenario where you're trying to, your sensor is trying to pick up some data, right? Or this sort of, but you want that to be an intelligent sensor, right? You don't want it to just send data all back to a cloud for processing. So in situations like that, you not only have to worry about the telecommunication aspects of it, but there's an enormous emphasis that is being put on designing intelligence. So think artificial intelligence, machine learning, and at the end of the day, both of these, I mean, examples that I gave you, they are going to require the development of an entire ecosystem, right? So what I mean by that is, in order to achieve that, you have to work across, circuits, algorithms, systems, architecture, right? And so all in all, it turns out that, if you look at where technology is sort of slated to be in the next decade or so, I think it's a great time to be an EXCC engineer, right? And again, I mean, where you end up sort of contributing is very much, what you enjoy in some sense, right? It's not so much that, hey, this is really sort of hot right now, so I'm going to go after it. But it, as I said, because everything has to go or has to develop to support these new technologies, right? You can choose where you want to really focus on, and I'm sure you can find opportunities for growing and contributing in those. So I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir. So since you're a professor, you would know the style of teaching in the West, and you'd also know the difference in the teaching methodologies in India and West. So could you tell us about that? And do you also think that those methodologies that are used in the West should be adopted in India as well?
That's a loaded question, right? The thing is, let me put it this way, right? So yes, you're right that I've experienced, sort of the teaching on the eastern part of the globe, and now I actually teach in the western part of the globe, and I will say this. So they're fundamentally very different, right? But having said that, I mean personally, I see the merits in both of them, right? And what I mean by that is, yes, they are different in the sense that they are, for example, for example, I mean, when I teach a graduate course, right, my emphasis is more on ensuring that a couple of concepts are very well, covered, as compared to having to go through a fixed syllabus in a particular amount of time. So it's a lot more flexible. It's a lot more focused on trying to come up with creative problems that really make students think, and so on and so forth. But that is and that is very I think that's very appropriate for graduate school type of work, and graduate school meaning that MS and PhD. But having said that, I mean some of the work that I'd done at the bachelor's, I mean having to really understand and go through the courses that I had to take, I value that too, right? Having to really understand how a stick diagram works for a transistor, for example, I value that. And so the best way I would sort of frame that answer is, I think each of them is valuable at different stages of your career, right? So for example, trying to have a textbook for a PhD level course probably is not the best use of resources, right? There I typically I can give you my own example. I try and give sort of research papers as as the basis for teaching a course. But if you're thinking of a more undergrad centric course design, maybe research papers are not the first thing you want to start with. You go to a textbook, you cover certain fundamentals, and again, the other thing that I will say that again, I mean, I don't know how the system has changed in the last 10 years, but at least here, one of the things I can always do is if a student is really interested in a particular aspect of the course, I can always tailor things to for that student in that particular way, right? Now, of course, I have to maintain consistency of evaluations and all that, but there is that sort of flexibility that I do have. So yeah, I mean, I would sort of conclude with the thing that everything is useful, but depends on which stage of your schooling you are, right? Or yeah, educational journey.
Yes, sir. Sir, you have received the best paper award from IEEE in the year 2017. So could you tell us about that paper, and also can you tell us about how to write research papers and any tips or tricks to learn or to master that art?
So I'll actually answer the second question first, and then sort of tell you a little bit about that paper. Writing high quality research papers is exceptionally hard. And for that very reason, when you get your first paper accepted, it is the only paper that you will remember the experience, right? I mean, again, I published papers after that, and I couldn't tell you which was published when, but the very first paper you get accepted is a milestone. So yes, there is no. I don't. I mean, the simplest thing I can tell you is there is no easy way to do that unless you go through the experience. It's almost like it's a rite of passage for learning how to write a research paper. But typically, if I have to give you a little bit of pointers on what works and what typically doesn't work, be it whatever journal you're trying to or conference for that matter that you're trying to publish in. Clarity of understanding and clarity of conveying a particular thought is really critical. And this is something that I will sort of step one. I mean, I'll take one step further and even make it sort of relevant even to other aspects of communication. So one of the things that you will always find being emphasized in at least graduate school, or at least I do that a lot, is how you communicate your ideas, right? So you might have the best ideas in the world, but if you cannot communicate them, you're underselling them in a big way. So whatever you do, I think the art of communication, be it through writing, speech, and be through presentations. It is exceeding. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of doing that. And so journal paper. I mean, or let's say publications are a part of that communication process, and how you grow through it. And typically, I would go on to say that graduate school is a great time to pick up those skills. It's one of those things where there is an assumption that there's a learning curve associated with that, and advisors work. I mean, most of the ones I know work exceedingly hard on making sure that the communication skills are top notch by the time you get out. And so that obviously includes how to write research papers. And so, yeah, I mean, for example, the students that I work with, I mean, it's always a learning curve for them, and the advisor really plays an integral role typically in helping achieve that.
Yes, sir. So my next question would bring you back to your days in Agnels, and so I would like to ask you about your time that you had in Agnels, and what role do you think FCRIT played in influencing your career choices or anything in life that you would like to share?
Well, I mean, so yeah, it's been a decade, and so I think I mean, I don't remember the sort of the exact specifics, but I sort of have a big picture idea and big picture sort of evaluation, if you will. I mean, I would say this, that overall it's been it has had a constructive role in sort of helping me get through to my goals. The one thing I will say, and again, this might be very cliched for students who are already there, but again, the sense of the sense of discipline, or the sort of structure that is there, is absolutely. I don't know what's the right word for it, but I can see the sort of trauma that people might have when they're through that. But eventually, it comes to really help you in a lot of ways. And especially, I can speak that for, say, when you undertake grad school. You're think about a case where you're starting your first year as a PhD student, or master's student for that matter, and you're really having to face this and research challenge. I mean, there's a research problem that's given to you, and you don't know what to do. And there are two sort of ways to think about it. One is that, hey, I'm gonna just run away from the problem, or you say, hey, I'm gonna work hard at doing that, or solving that. And I think that experience of, hey, I can put in the hours to make it work. At least in my personal experience, that's been a big positive. I think my opinion about this changed, say, about a year into my grad school days, where I said, hey, this has been a helpful experience after all, right? But no, I think again, that was on a much lighter note. But on a serious note, I think that sense of structure which comes with the way the department operates has a lot of value going. Down the lane. Yeah, I'm very much for that.
Yes, I completely agree with your thoughts about
Really?
discipline. So lastly, I would like to know if you have any message for your fellow Aglonites.
Well, again, I think, as I said, enjoy the experience. It's a good time to be in. College in any form is a good place to. I would say enjoy, but I think what I mean by enjoy is use that as an opportunity to really grow as an individual, and then you enjoy the experience overall. Because what you realize and this is not just true for undergraduate school, but even graduate school in some sense, if you're interested, is that the goal is that what you went in as and what you come out as, that there has to be an order of magnitude difference between that, right? And I think if you are able to achieve that, or if you see yourself getting to that goal, I think it's a successful experience. The one advice I will say, or one thing that is always, so I would say, the way I think about things is that, again, all through your student career and even beyond that, there are going to be things where there are 50 things on your plate that you need to manage. The way I like to think about it is, think about one or two things in life that really matter to you, right? With those particular things, my personal sort of take on it is that you should have an attitude of, do what it takes to achieve it, right? And so, be it whatever. If you want to start a company, sure, go for it. And do what it takes to get there. If it's if it's academia, sure, do the same thing, right? But I think identify a couple of things that you really enjoy, and you see yourself sort of being able to spend your entire sort of career in that, and then go after it with all earnestness. And I think if you do that once or twice in your early career, I think I don't see why someone should not be successful in whatever sense.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, sir, for all these insights that you shared with us. I would now like to open this platform to the audience, that is the teachers and the students, to ask doubts or queries if you have any. So you can raise your hands and unmute. Would anyone like to ask something? So you can go ahead. Yes, Anand, sir, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, sir. I have one question. Uh, what are the or what will be the different upcoming research areas in the next decade, so that students will start focusing on those particular areas so that they can pursue MS or PhD after their graduation?
I presume you're referring to the electronics and telecommunication relevant ones, right? Uh, so so there are a bunch of them that are coming up. I mean, I'll list a few of them that at least at UVA we want to really develop going forward. So one of them is this idea of what they call as trying to realize intelligence at the edge. So think about it. Think about how most of things work today, right? Let's say you have a computing system. So you try and let's say your phone picks up a picture and you want to analyze what's going on. The way it typically works is that the entire data is sent back to the cloud through a telecommunication network, and then the server or the server farm essentially ends up doing all the processing. But what we want to get at eventually is we want to push all of those computing operations to the very edge, meaning that if the phone is taking the picture, you want the phone to be able to do a lot of the analysis, and that's already happening. But think about a more extreme case of it, where all the sensors or all the points of information are the places where you essentially have all the computing capabilities, right? So what that means is, number one, you need to have a really strong computing system and a really energy efficient one. So things that are working on really high compute efficiencies. And so in that scenario, I mean, the typical research areas that come out of that scenario would be there is a lot of emphasis on low power circuit design, right? How do you do, for example, sub-threshold CMOS? Again, then there is a lot of emphasis on machine learning. So can you come up with algorithms that are intelligent in, say, seeing through data? And so instead of processing a gigabyte of data, can I have an AI algorithm that's able to reduce that to, say, a megabyte and really process or work on that, right? And then, of course, if you go further down in the sort of the tech hierarchy, you want to have more computing platforms. So, for example, today, if your Intel processor, a state-of-the-art Intel processor is, requiring X number of joules of energy to compute a certain operation, can I reduce that by a factor of 10? And so that brings down to things like the Moore's law and coming up with scaled technology nodes, going from, say, 45 nanometer to 7 nanometer FinFET technology node. So that's more on the fabrication and the hardware design side of things. And so that those are open areas as well. And then, of course, on the communication side, one of the big areas that we want to pursue is how do we access more frequency bands? Right now, we are already bandwidth saturated, and so if you want to, how do you build devices and circuits and protocols that are going to work with even higher frequencies, for example, right? And so the challenges that come along with that have to be addressed, and so that's one area for doing that. And of course, the thing I'll emphasize here is that again, when I say going to a different frequency band, there is a lot to it that is required to achieve that. So, for example, you have to build sort of devices and the hardware that can actually operate in those bands with high efficiency. Along with that, you also then have to come up with the protocols that allow you to communicate with that, right? So that's one thing. Spectrum management actually turns out is a big area of interest right now. And they're trying to sort of integrate, for example, machine learning and AI into spectrum management. So how do I, allocate frequencies in an intelligent fashion. And those are the kind of problems that are being addressed. And then the sort of the last one that comes to my mind, and this is rather out there, is quantum computing. As we go towards as classical computers sort of run out of steam for certain applications, there is an enormous effort, at least in America, which is sort of funded by this CHIPS Act, by the Quantum Act, that is really trying to get quantum computers to a point of practical usage. And so, a lot of the effort lies out there. Now, one point I will make is, yes, a little bit of prior experience in this, in these areas is helpful, but I don't think that graduate school is typically ruled out because you don't have prior experience. Because it's not expected for undergrads to be working on, state-of-the-art problems. Otherwise PhD would not be required, or, graduate school would not be required. The idea is that A, you should have a genuine interest, and B, differentiate yourself in terms of what you can contribute, right? I'll give you my own little experience, which is, so my PhD boss was actually, he came from Intel, and I wanted to work in electronic devices, and there's no way I can sort of try and say, hey, I know what I'm talking about. He just basically said, hey, I'm interested in this, and I'm here to learn, and that got us started in some sense. So just that's something I would definitely emphasize. You should really have a genuine interest in that area. That's the way I'll put it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Next, we have Megha, ma'am. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Hello, Nikhil. Very, very glad to see you.
Hi, Professor Kulekar.
Oh my God. So I have a question regarding your research. I wanted your inputs on how much your research is involving interdisciplinary component, and did you make a conscious effort in going interdisciplinary, or did it come like in the flow, need based? And the second question is what typical tips from your experience you would like to give to our cream research interested students who would like to grab opportunities in interdisciplinary research?
No, I think that's a great question. So the first thing is I will say this, which is, so the first point is, yes, my research is, I would say very interdisciplinary, and quite unlike where so for example, my PhD was, I would say, typically, electron devices. Hardcore design, characterization, and modeling of electron devices. So I've worked on transistors, memories, whatnot. And by the time I came to UVA, again, there's a critical component that you have to worry about, and you don't realize that as a graduate student, which is you have to raise money, right? And research is expensive. It's really expensive. And so what that means is that really, and I say that not in a negative way, but it really forces you to think. And so while I came in with a lot of experience on the electron device side, I had to sort of start connecting that to computing. So how can we, how do those devices eventually help you improve computation? And so, coming in, I actually started working with these ideas of, what they call as dynamical systems. So I started working with these oscillators, in fact, and neurons and oscillators. And we showed that, hey, they can be used for solving problems that are traditionally very difficult to solve on conventional computers. So one example I can give you is, and I sort of know, I remember this vaguely, but integer factorization or prime factorization, right? It turns out that a lot of the quantum computers are geared towards, trying to crack, the RSA codes. But it turns out that we have been trying to do this on chip with a classical, not a quantum system, right? And so what that means for us is, we have to, so one of the things that my group focuses on is actually we tape out chips. So students will actually design the chip. We send it to TSMC. They fab the chip for us and they bring it back. And so that's one part of it. But the second part that I have to also focus on is to actually come up with the computing models that allow us to do that, right? So, for example, how do I crack cryptography, or how do I crack, prime factorization using a bunch of oscillators, right? And you would not think of oscillators as being able to solve these kind of problems, but it turns out it can. We've been focusing on problems like that. And so what, to your original question, which is I have to now not only worry about the math, and I was never really that great at it, but I've had to adapt. But and then then I have to also worry about the physics and the microelectronics aspect of it, which has come from the the taping out process of the actual chip. So we have to I have to take it from the point of the original design to the point where we actually get these millimeter by millimeter chips that then end up doing the computation for us. And so, yes, it is interdisciplinary a lot. But the other thing I will say, which is sort of mistaken in all of the, I would say, glamour of interdisciplinary research, is you can really have an impact on interdisciplinary research only if you bring certain core competencies to the table. So, for example, I mean, the part that I'm not very, I'm not very much in favor of is, yes, I can do a little bit of devices, I can do a little bit of materials, I can do a little bit of math. But if I can't make a fundamental contribution to at least one of them, then you're basically left hanging high and dry. And you're sort of nowhere to be seen in any case. So yeah. So for example, in my case, what I did was, hey, I said I can do oscillators and I can do the math behind the oscillators, and that's what I'm going to work with. But for example, what that means is I have to now collaborate with people who are, say, going to use, come up with a system architecture for using those, our compute primitives and actually solving or cracking a cryptographic code, for example. That's I mean, I don't want to venture that far because again, I start spreading myself too thin with that, right? And so that's the way I will put it. So you have to have certain core competencies, and then you all obviously start building an ecosystem around it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Great.
So I think if Nikhil thinks on this line, we can expect third patent from Nikhil. So he has already 2 patents on his name.
There's a lot of valuable inputs. The core competencies are really important, and it has to go with the flow, right? The interdisciplinary component has to come with the flow. That's really true.
I mean, a lot, and again, it turns again. I mean, this can easily be a 3-hour discussion, right? but the point, the thing is, I mean, what ends up happening is, again, I mean, the way typically things work here is, you have to, again, as I said, if I hire a PhD student, I have to, it's typically sponsor the PhD. That's the way it typically works, and which means that I have to, get some funding agency to actually sponsor that work. And so what ends up happening is a lot of the funding agencies have their own, like criteria, what they want to focus on. And so you have to, use your competencies to sort of deliver on those aspects as well. And so, for example, here, National Science Foundation is very much focused on the fundamental science, and for example, if I were to propose my research, I mean, I'm going to have to deal with, hey, how are these computational models working? What do they do? What are their constraints? When does the system become chaotic? Blah blah. But if I'm looking at a more, say, other agencies, they're like, okay, let's deliver the system, see how it performs, and then we'll go from there. So those kind of factors also end up playing a major role. Yeah.
I think collaboration is the key. If it requires core competency in some entirely different field, it's better to collaborate than.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and especially with the way, I mean, engineering research has come to, I mean, where it has come to right now. It's no longer, I'm going to work in the backyard and, right? It's no longer the days of Lavoisier and, so yeah, and it's very expensive too. So, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Nikhil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question is from Yash Mistry. Yash, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Miguel. Yeah. Since you employ students for research programs, like me being an student who is enrolled in electronics and communication engineering, uh, have interest in subjects which are conventionally like put into electrical engineering. Like,
Mhm.
okay, electronics is a subset of electrical, but uh, okay, let me be very clear. I am interested in renewable energy. So, which turns out in our conventional eastern side of the globe system becomes a part of electrical engineering. So I want to apply for internship or a research fellowship, how do I show my credibility in this particular field? Like, since all the courses or maybe the sources of information remain global, what are the sources or trainings which I can undergo to show my credibility that okay, I'm proficient with this particular subject?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the first thing I'll sort of emphasize here is, we don't have electronics differentiated from electrical, for example, right? Typically, most universities are going to different. They have these sort of core departments, so you're going to deal with electrical engineering. So for example, my department technically is electrical engineering, but I don't do what I know you're referring to as electrical engineering, right? And it's primarily microelectronics in my case. And so what that ends up implying is that the advantage of at least the American system is that the barriers are very fluid, right? So for example, if you find advisor or mentor whose interests align with yours, and vice versa, it does not matter. They will get you into that program, right? So what I'm trying to essentially get at is, it's not a question of, okay, I'm in electronics, so how do I go to electrical? No, it's that, can you find an advisor who can really advise you through grad school, right? And I'm talking more of PhD. Master's is slightly different, but it is still, if your interest lie within the domain of electrical engineering in a very broad sense, right? As long as you're dealing with electrons in some sense, you're good, right? Um, and so I would not think of that as a barrier in any way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, partially. Like you said that I need to find someone, a mentor who has the coherent interest with me. But for him to get interested in my work, basically to show that okay, my particular back of knowledge or maybe the sense is very much what do you say? Because everybody in the world knows that how the Indian education system functions, like, and how those things are very static in terms of what subjects are taught. So that is the reason I was asking that how do I there should be some like, in my understanding there should be some sort of what do you say a sort of a certificate wherein you can show that okay, this particular things showcases that I'm okay proficient in this particular thing and I am capable of contributing something or maybe getting to work.
Well, so I mean, I don't want to comment on what options you have right now, but what I can tell you is, if a situation like that happened here, right? Let's say a student has been, let's say a student suddenly develops an interest in a slightly different area from what they've been working on for, say, the past, whatever time they've been in grad school. The way it would typically work is, you would go and find a person that say for example, let's say there's a professor that you feel is going to be able to going to be the right person to advise you. You can just say that, hey, I want to do a project with you, right? And once you do the project, there are two things that happen. A, you are the one who sort of learns through their experience. And number one, and then the second thing I can tell you, which I don't know, I mean, how it stands today, but in America, there is an enormous emphasis on recommendation letters. So, for example, when let's say your professor, whoever that you did the project with, writes a letter saying, hey, this student was with me. He was really good at what he did. He learned a lot. He contributed so and so. people take that very seriously, right? And so that is the context that you would you would apply here. Now, in your current situation, I cannot give you the exact sort of specifics, but think along those lines, right? Try and come up with a project internship that gives you that gives you a break through the door, right? And again, I mean, I hate to sort of say this, but there is no one fixed rule for doing that, right? I mean, while I hear your suggestion about the certification, I think that's just sort of bottling somebody into one area, right? Let's say you come up with a very creative solution to a problem that is well known in another area, and somebody else just does it by taking an exam. Do you think that your effort should reflect the same value as somebody else's? Probably not, right? So I mean, again, the idea of certification seems great on paper, where you can say, this is my proof, or hence proved. But think about a creative way of showing your real earnestness in that area. I think that is, and again, in grad school applications, for example, creativity is really valued, right? Instead of what happens is many a times the applications come with the same sort of format, right? Why would I distinguish student A from student B, right? But if you come back and tell me, hey, you know what, I did this, that was really, I mean, out of my own initiative, I took the effort of doing this. People really like that.
Yeah. Hi, Nikhil. I'm sorry I'm coming in between. I will just speak for 1 minute, and because I have to go for one meeting. So first of all, thank you very much on behalf of Department of Electronics and Telecom for sharing your experiences. I know that the local time will be late night over there, but then also you are here and you are sharing your experiences. So thank you for that. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, and in the last 1 decade, just in 1 minute, I will tell you what is the transformation in education sector which is going on in India. So one is national education policy. The central government, they had come up with that policy. And in the next 10 years, whatever flexibility the foreign universities you are having over there, as far as students are concerned, the flexibility in selecting the courses, etc., all that flexibility, credit transfer from one university to other university, all those things, they are part of that national education policy, and maybe the future students, they will be able to take advantage of that. That is one thing. Even in the University of Mumbai curriculum, now we are coming up with the honors degree and minors degree. So whatever those upcoming areas you had said, Internet of Things and AI and machine learning. So students will have, our students, electronics and telecom students, they will have that opportunity to have the honors and minors degree. And apart from that, what you said, one point, that here we studied lots of things. So that also is taken care to some extent. And initially during your time, or even the current final year students, the credit requirement was around 200 to 210. Now that credit requirement for BTech degree, BE degree, it has been reduced to something 170.
Okay.
The objective is that they will get that flexibility in implementing their projects, and they will learn some new skills, etc. So that is what is the transformation. And in the next 1 or 2 years, even our college, we are planning for autonomy. So I hope that some of the points you had raised, because your objective was our discipline, but I hope that apart from our discipline in near future, whatever those changes are there, that flexibility will be brought in the systems, and maybe our students will be able to take advantage of that. So that is what I wanted to share with you as well as our students.
That is great. That is great. I mean, I think, my general take on these things is, as long as you have a positive trajectory, you're always going to make progress. So I'm really happy to hear that. By the way, I mean, for folks, I mean, Dr. Shah was my capstone project advisor, final year. So this is, I mean, I'm really happy to hear that. Whatever way I can contribute, if there's an opportunity, I'm happy to do that.
I'm really happy you are doing wonderful job over there as far as research is concerned, and our best wishes to you for your professional growth as well as your personal growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please continue. I will leave the meeting. Please continue.
Thank you, sir. We have The last question for today from Anika Rai. Anika, you can unmute and ask it out.
Yeah, hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So, good morning, sir. So, my question is, sir, while recruiting students for research programs, what skills do you expect them to have?
What skills? That's a good question. One thing I'll tell you is everybody has their own sort of criteria for doing things. Because again, hiring is very individualized here. At least I can speak for University of Virginia and even many other cases. So you apply through a common sort of platform, but then advisors look at applications on their own. But I can speak for myself and many of my colleagues that I work with. We are looking for two things. Typically, one is, how strong strong your fundamentals are in whatever area that you want to work in, right? So if you claim that this is really of interest to you, then the least we expect is that you at least understand what the basics in that area are. And so, for example, let's say you wanted to work in electronic devices, then I'm probably going to expect that you understand how a diode works, or how a transistor works, for that matter. The second part of that is, we're also looking for a little bit of the motivation behind the student. So, the reason I say that is because, think about it this way, especially if you do a master's, it's 2 years, and it's a little low. I mean, it's not so much on the research side of things, but especially if you do a PhD. And by the way, certain areas would really require you to do a PhD to get a hang of what's going on. Okay, so that's another thing I'll encourage you to keep in mind. But especially for, say, PhD level work, right? I can tell you that 80% of the days are going to be frustrating, right? Because things don't work the way you want them to work in the first shot. It takes enormous amount of perseverance to make things work. And so what that means is, if let's say on day number 5, you still haven't gotten a result, what's going to keep you interested in the program? It's your motivation, right? How badly do you want to succeed at it? And that's another thing we typically look for, or at least I look for, in evaluating graduate students. Typically if these two things line up, the rest is sort of more immaterial in some sense. Because again, and just to clarify, we are not looking for things like, hey, tell me how this artificial intelligence algorithm works in this scenario. No, that's not what we are interested in. I'm not going to ask you very detailed questions, because if you already knew that, what's the point of doing graduate school, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's my take on that.
I think we are done with the doubts and queries from the audience. So with that, I would like to end this interview session that we had today. And thanks a lot, sir. I had a really great time talking to you and knowing about your experiences and about your journey. Thanks a lot. And I would now hand over this to Shaunak. You can continue from here, Shaunak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to thank you on behalf of the Alumni Committee 2021 for joining us today in this interview and sharing us such skills and knowledge that you have acquired in your field. This was really informative session, sir. You helped us gain great insights about foreign studies and how to pursue after bachelor's. The information on different fields and how to write and publish research papers will really help us in the future. Your experiences and the way you communicated them with us definitely made a great impact. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you stop? Would you like to stop the recording?